time is it? 9:33. So, for those of you who are joining us later, this is another one of our regularly unscheduled live streams. Hold on one second. And because it is semi-regularly unscheduled, we got to wait for people to get here. So, while we're waiting, let me start the remains of my cigar. This is my last one. Good evening, whoever's here. Oh, for crying out loud. Sorry. Be just 1 second. Hey, Harold, how's it going, buddy? This is my last cigar for a while. This is just my last of my block of 20, and I started smoking it earlier, and thankfully I let it go out because I wasn't paying attention, and so I still got half of it to smoke here with the live stream. Just wouldn't be the same without the cigar. We're going to have a short live stream anyway. Finer than frog hair. That's pretty fine, Harold. The Quiet American. Yeah, that's pretty quick. I don't really like the cigar first thing. We do not have a topic this evening, men. Although I have a little bit of a topic. I have two little pieces of a topic. Good evening, Mark. How are you, sir? Let me put a slightly better burn on this thing, or I'll be fighting it all night long. Good enough. So we got a couple of little topics. Then, of course, you men will be more interesting than me. Good evening, Tim. And you will take us off in directions that I had not thought of beforehand. Once again, I only got half a cigar. I'm not even plugging in my phone. We're just going to go until the phone dies, I think. I'm not sure how long that'll take. But I have 4 quick observations, and then we'll go from there. First off, I've been watching, hey, Patriot Pop's here. Get the good stuff on early. The old part is here. Oh, hey, Anita. Boy goes to basic tomorrow as E2. Congratulations. He must have, was he an Eagle Scout, or did he get a couple of people to, how did he get to E2? And what branch is he going on? Give us some details. You got his MOS? Let us know. That's awesome. So I've been watching I call them cope videos, or from back at the election, watching the news anchors from the night, back November 5th, and how they started out the night talking about, Kamala Harris's win, impending win, and then ending the night with obviously her, now it seems very obvious loss, but at the time it wasn't obvious at all to me. And it's pretty damn hysterical. I've watched probably little PT. Okay, so he got the E2 because his physical fitness was up, and he is working on Apaches, which means he is joining the Army. Well done, young man. Those of us who pray will keep him in our prayers. And thank him for his service on our behalf. We will all sleep a little safer at night knowing he's off the roads. No, knowing that another fine young man is serving the Republic. I got one of my sons who I'm trying to talk into to going to boot camp. He's in a good spot in his life. Shalom, Landon. It's good to see you, sir. So these Cope videos, they're pretty hysterical because they're all identical. I mean, they all start off the exact same way, and I've watched probably 20 of them over the last week or so. Uh, and so I know I've watched the BBC. I've watched a couple of MSNBCs. Anyone ever notice that Rachel Maddow looks exactly like Lyle Lovett? Like if you did a side by side with Rachel Maddow and Lyle Lovett, I think you'd. I'm probably dating myself with that Lyle Lovett reference. I saw Lyle Lovett in concert once, but it was at the 2004 Republican National Convention in New York. And so he was playing a real small room, and he was not happy about it. Not a Republican. He refused to do an encore. He wouldn't talk to anybody. Didn't. I'm pretty sure it was Lyle Lovett. I'm 99% sure it was Lyle Lovett. It might have been one of the other ones, but I think it was Lyle Lovett. What good concert. Uh, in Virginia training, so told him about revolutionary Yorktown history. Ice cream time. Woohoo! I could go for some ice cream. Daddy likes some ice cream. But anywho, these Cope videos. These people absolutely are all on the same script. They've got like group text messages because they all start the exact same way. They're all fixated on this one poll that came out of Iowa towards the end. Some of you probably remember the Seltzer poll and how it predicted Trump was going to win Iowa by 3, and then they extrapolated that out and they just built sandcastles. They built so many sandcastles off of this one stupid Seltzer poll. They all talked about it, every single one. BBC, MSNBC, CNN, CBS. They were all just on and on and on about this stupid poll. And I watched Crowder's election night coverage, which was the best election night coverage. Oh man, it was hysterical. Louder with Crowder, and they did all these skits. So whenever they called the state, they had pre-recorded these skits. Steven Crowder does Donald Trump better than Donald Trump. Like they should hire Steven Crowder to be Trump's stunt double. His Trump impersonation is so good. And they did all these pre-recorded skits when they called the state of Crowder dressed up like Trump doing like this, spiking the football and singing these little songs, and it was just absolutely hysterical, and it was joyous, and it was fantastic. If you can go back and watch clips of it, I would do it. It's well worth it. Um, so I hadn't even watched like Fox News or anyone's election night coverage. I'd only watched Crowder's, and it was really, really. And I still haven't watched Fox News's. I should go back and I don't know why I'd go back and do that, but just to complete the cycle. Uh, but it was very, very, and maybe it wasn't enlightening, but it was very interesting to go back and watch how all these news media figures were responding as the night wore on, and how their faces kept getting longer and longer and longer, and they all kept saying the same thing. It was like they downloaded their dialogue from the cloud or something. I don't. It was just really, really weird, and a lot of women and a lot of gay guys. I don't know why they're so. I don't know why they're so shocked that working men are abandoning them, because if you look at their their feeds and their shows and everything, it's all women and gay guys. What do they think men are gonna do? Straight men, we don't identify with women and gay guys. We identify with men. And so, yeah, they're throwing they're throwing straight men and working men at the Steven Crowders and the Joe Rogans and all these people uh, because now this is a little funny. I'm a little bit of a hypocrite here because I used to like roll my eyes and get all mad when people would say representation matters and we need more black people in media and we need more gay people on TV. And now here I am about to turn 50 and the tide's turned and I'm saying the same thing, except I'm not saying the same thing because they used to talk about, oh, it's so unfair, we don't have any representation, we don't have access. Uh, and I'm not saying, oh, let me in. I'm saying, well, of course we're going to go start our own thing. So it isn't the same message. Their message was a whiny one of victimhood. Mine is just an interesting observation. Uh, and I'm going to go with all the men and go build something new because that's what men do. We build things. Uh, Rob Painless is with us. Mr. Painless, it is good to see you, sir. I don't know what we did to be so honored, but we are deeply honored. So anyway, that was I was just very interested in all that and the scolding. Like there was just finger wagging. There was this one gay guy on CNN. It was a black gay guy, and I just tell you that so that you can try to identify him because black was not his main identity. His main identity was gay. He kept talking like this, driving me nuts. Uh, uh, he just had his hands all like constantly. I don't know. The way he worked his hands with his fingers spread and just he kept like paddling in the midair and there. I don't know. I could not. But when I could ignore his hands and pay attention to his words, he was just whiny and cryy and accusative and uh, Mike's from Montana. Uh, uh, and absolutely fixated on his own perspective. Like he took over this news broadcast, and he was incensed, outraged, deeply hurt, betrayed even that the entire country hadn't taken his feelings into consideration when they voted. He was very very personally insulted at the outcome of the election, and not just like, oh, my side lost, I'm angry, like I was in 2020. Look, I was a baby in 2020. I was pissy, but it wasn't like this personal whiny. Uh, how could you possibly not do what I wanted you to do? It wasn't a personal affront to him that his will wasn't uh, uh, bowed to. And there was a bunch of these. Uh, all of them were just like outraged on there was like a personal insult. How dare you? Umbrage. There was umbrage uh, that anyone would not do what they had, you know, that these speakers had expected them to do. Um, and they even like showed a clip of Obama, which I hadn't seen the clip before. I don't watch much news. I listen to a lot of podcasts and then I read a lot of articles. So I don't I very rarely do I see the visuals around this story. I'm hearing it or I'm reading it, and I learn better by reading than I do by anything. So I had heard about this when it happened, and I had read on articles about it, but I hadn't seen Obama like deliver the message. And he was lecturing black men. This was right before the election. I guess they had some internal polling that told them that black men were straying off the plantation, and he was trying to get them all back on the plantation. And he was like in a room, and it was obviously like just like a conference room in a campaign headquarters because it had Harris signs all over the walls. Uh, but it was a close up on, maybe not like a close up, but it was framed all around Obama from like the thighs up. It was like a torso shot, and he was supposedly talking to a room full of black men, but you can only see like one guy in the corner, so you have no idea how many men were in the room. Not that Obama couldn't fill a room. I mean, obviously he could have, but it 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 felt like it was a very staged thing, which is fine. I mean, it's it's politics. Let's not act like Trump doesn't stage things, but it didn't come across as genuine just in the whole uh, setting, the set piece. But I think he was actually wagging his finger. I mean, he just looked like a school teacher lecturing little boys about they were being rowdy in the lunchroom or something. And then these asshats went and spent $20 million to try to figure out why they have a man problem and why the working class is abandoning them. And like I was like could could think is that these these are actually, and the entire party is a party of school teachers, and they think the way you talk to the lower classes is to scold them. You're going to be suspended, and you're going to not be able to get a good education if you don't listen to me. I finally saw the thing with Tim Wall's wife too, where she kept saying, "Turn the page, turn the page." Again, I hadn't seen the visuals on it. I'd read the story, I was familiar with the incident, but I hadn't seen her like do it, and I was just floored that they would allow anyone that stupid to get in a room full of people. I mean, she if you didn't see it, she went into this big long spiel about how, we're turning the page from Obama, or I'm sorry, from Trump. And anytime you get mad at Trump, don't get, and it was literally this like librarian lecturing, trying to be really like big eyed and make her voice sound full of wonder for the kindergarten children and give them a love of turn the page. Okay, we're going to practice it now. Practice it with me. Turn the page. What are we going to do? We're going to turn. She did it like a half dozen times in a row, and I was just cringe. I was like, oh my god, I can't. I couldn't physically watch any more of that, or I was going like I just had this visceral reaction of like it's fingernails on a chalkboard. The condescension and the awkwardness. I did it again. I mean, who do these people think they're talking to? They're trying to appeal to working class anybody. I mean, working class women wouldn't have put up with. My wife spends all day long with 8 small children, and she wouldn't. I mean, that would make her want to leave the room. She's a homeschool mom. I mean, she spent. Oh, that would make it even worse. How did he? There was this joke back when I used to be really involved with Republican politics. I fairly involved. I was an alternate delegate to the 2004 National Convention. It was all my ex-wife. She was really involved, but I was also involved. Uh, and the joke used to be, two Democrats meet for the first time, and the first thing they say to each other is, "Where do you teach?" Because the stereotype was that the entire Democrat Party was teachers unions, which is probably not far from wrong. They all think they're professors. They all think they're so smart. God, they think they're so smart. Uh, I mean, I think I'm smart, but these people think. Oh, that was the other thing I saw on those election coverage. They kept. They were talking about the split in the electorate, and every like couple of minutes, someone would have to stop and kind of like look down and say, you know, there's an education gap. Educated people vote for Harris. It's uneducated, and just like uh, such condescension. It's just I'm just gonna have to come back to that word over and over and over and over and over. Condescension. These are some of the most condescending, puffed up, self-satisfied, arrogant people I've ever met in my life. I felt bad for some of these women because it was all women who did this. You know they're uneducated. It's only uneducated women who'd vote for Trump. Um, hey, Mike. Oh, the other thing I saw too in these that I hadn't seen before. But again, I'd read the story, so I knew, I knew the verbiage and everything, but I hadn't seen the visuals on this thing. Oh my God. These people, liberals and Democrats and the left, they used to be excellent at entertainment. That's what their thing was. They won the culture war because they were entertaining, they were talented, they were beautiful, they were funny. You wanted to watch them and listen to them because they were, I mean, say what you want about some of those weirdos, but they were really good at the entertainment aspect of it. And they would do slick ads, and they would have cool celebrities, and they yeah, but they're not even good at it. Uh, the There was this ad, and it made a big splash when it came out, but I hadn't seen the visuals. And the whole point of the ad is that, as a woman, the only place left in America where you have freedom of choice is the ballot box. And the whole thing was that, your husband won't know, and it says it specifically. I mean, it says it straight up. Your husband won't know if you vote for Harris. But they set it up because there's the stereotypical white guy, could have been any one of us, and he comes out of the voting box and he's like, "Your turn, honey," and he's got the hat, and he's just straight up one of us. And this poor white woman, and she looks so scared, and she's like glancing back at him, and she's like, oh, literally like trembling in the video. Some of you have probably seen this, and she walks into the voting booth, and she's like looking around, and she looks up, and she catches the eye of a woman on the other side of the voting booth, and they give each other a little knowing smile, and then they fill in for Harris, and it's like, and it says this, it says, and he'll never know. That's the voiceover, and your husband will never know. And it was just such a liberal fever dream of what like a heterosexual uh, uh, traditional marriage is, as this husband's beating his wife, and she's so scared of him, she's not even sure that she can vote in the secret, cast her secret ballot without him somehow knowing what she's done, and beating her for it. But the solidarity she felt with this other woman in the voting box gave her the courage to, and it was condescending to the woman. Like these women looked like they were scared little weaklings. Of course, it was just a straight up. I mean, it was so. I mean, I actually identified with the man. I was like, "Yeah, you go, brother. You got her on lockdown. Well done. This guy knows how to husband." Because it was so stupid, I mean, it was just so stupid. It's like those old cheesy movies from the 50s and 60s. They're so bad, they're good. Like this guy was just such an over the top, stupid stereotype. I was just like, I'm on your side, buddy. You got me. I guarantee you that ad drove away women who might have voted for Harris, because they watched that ad and they were just like, "Oh my God, that is so stupid. That is so insulting. That is so condescending. No, you can't have my vote." And it was like, time and time and time again after all this stuff I was seeing that I hadn't seen before, because like I said, I don't watch the video very much. It was the same thing. It was stupid. It was condescending. It was preachy. Uh, and it was scolding. That it's like they're going to scold people into doing what they think is the right thing. These are, I tell you what should scare us. And other people have said this. This is not an original thought to me by any stretch of the imagination. It should scare us that this wasn't a Mondale style blowout. Yeah, we could talk about Harris Waltz too. That's something else I noticed, Mike. Uh, JD Vance or Hunter for the next prez. Hunter's probably a great guy to hang out with. He's probably a lot of fun at a party. But I think it was Reagan's second. Yeah, it was Reagan's second election against Mondale. He took 49 out of 50 states. It really, really bothers me that having watched all these people, that it wasn't another blowout like that. I mean, like how did she take any states? Like is there legitimately 45% of the country that resonates with that kind of messaging? I I could not believe it. And then someone just brought up Waltz. I hadn't seen much with Waltz either as far as visuals go. I'd heard some clips and like I said, I get most of my news through podcasts and then articles online. I read Zero Hedge and Breitbart and Drudge Report, and I used to read The Guardian, and I should probably start reading The Guardian again. And so whatever's linked on those, Zero Hedge, Breitbart, and Drudge, I'll consume that stuff, and then the podcast. So I'll listen to because I listen to the audio. I don't watch the video. So Shapiro, Crowder. I listen to Jordan Peterson a fair amount. I listen to this Catholic podcast called Pints with Aquinas, but he doesn't do much politics. And then on the left, I'll listen to Pod Save America, and then Know Your Enemy, and In Bed with the Right, and then a few of the little ones here and there. And those are my main sources of news. And Pod Save or In Bed with the Right and Know Your Enemy don't really do current events. They do kind of a deeper analysis of a historical. They think they're brilliant. They're not, but they do give information. Hey Ozarks, I used to drive a lot for work. Well, Brandon Herrera lost his primary. If he'd won the primary, he probably would have been in Congress, but he lost. Maybe he's going to run again. I don't know. But he did run, and he didn't get out of the primary. He did force a runoff, though. So he didn't do terrible. But I used to drive a lot for work, and that's what I could get to listen to the podcast while I was driving. And then, with doing the work, I was working on houses. And so while I was working on the house, I'd listen to podcasts while I worked. So I had like 15 to 16 hour days if you count the drive to and back, and then, and so I had a lot of time to listen to a lot of podcasts. And it's really the only way I could, because I don't do well in isolation. I need to be around people. And so if I'm not around people, I really need to have my brain engaged, or I can end up in some dark places. So that's how I was able to listen to so many podcasts. Now, that job has recently ended. I just got a phone call Wednesday, and they told me, hey, we're out of work. I'm sorry, we can't keep you working. Please drop the truck off, and good luck. So, that was my week. But, I mean, it's not like a tragedy. I've got savings. I've got silver. I've been able to pick up odd jobs. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do yet, but I've got some options, and so it's like no tragedy, no crisis. Everything's fine. It's just it's always a little stressful looking for work or not having work set. But anywho, So I probably don't get to listen to that many podcasts going forward. I may have to adjust my news consumption and find a new way to stay current. Oh, I listened to another one called Maiden Mother Matriarch. Really interesting woman. She's a British feminist, but she's on this rightward trajectory, and she's getting fantastically socially conservative. Still very economically liberal, and would still, she's one of these weird feminists where she was going to tell you that, on a personal level, I'm pro-life, and I would never ever recommend an abortion or say anyone should have abortion or you should always have the baby. But I want I want women to have that option. It's a really confused position as far as I can tell, and I don't think it's one that this particular woman is going to hold for long because she's too smart. She's not going to be able to have the conflict. It's going to have to go one way or the other. But if you're someone who likes to listen to sane people who disagree with you, she's really, really interesting on a whole host of levels. Another woman who's kind of in that same vein is called Megan Murphy, and her podcast was called The Same Drugs, and she's also very interesting. I listened to that one a lot too. And then I would listen to Peter Schiff, who has gotten on a little, hey, Dean, good evening, who I have backed off. I haven't listened to him as much since Trump got elected because he's just got so repetitive. Peter Schiff despises tariffs. Same thing with Shapiro, by the way. I quit listening to Shapiro for a little while because I just couldn't hear him blather on about tariffs one more time. Because they have a position, that's fine. They can support their position, but it takes 2 minutes. Oh, I believe in the free markets. I think tariffs distort the free markets. I don't think they're good for trade. Okay, that's a fair opinion. I used to hold that position myself. I used to agree 100%. I don't anymore because there is no such thing as a free market. I think free markets would be a wonderful thing. Just like unicorns would be a wonderful thing if they existed. They don't. We can have a free market system in this country because we can make our markets free enough. They're still not free, but they're at least they're close enough to free that the free market system will work inside our borders. There's no such thing as a free market once you cross the borders. You cannot let the free market reign with trade with China because China's not a free market. It's not a free market. Free market principles don't work outside of a free market. We got to be free market inside our borders, and we got to be mercantilist assholes outside our borders. Neither here nor there. But anywho, back to my original point before I go on all that. These people aren't good at the art anymore. Oh yeah, everyone used to be for tariffs back then, and I am a big fan now. Big fan of tariffs done right. I think, and I'm 80% sure I'm on the tariff train. Sane tariffs. Think back to the Olympics, and we all saw that that opening ceremony for the Olympics, where they had all those homos and trannies dressed up so weird, and in years past, it would have been an amazing show, but it was ugly. I mean, the singing wasn't good. The dancing wasn't good. It's not just that these were, men dressed up like women. It's like they weren't talented. The songs were stupid. They weren't performed well. The dancing looked horrid. I mean, the whole thing was off-putting from start to finish. And in the past, something like that would have been an amazing spectacle. It would have been dancing girls, and uh, the whole thing would have been amazing. It would have been like a Vegas meets Broadway. There's some truly evil art out there that's really, really well done and enjoyable to watch. That's what makes it so effective. When it's off-putting and ugly and disgusting, it's not effective anymore. And these people's talent is my two goats exist despite the unicorn conundrum. What is this? Want a Joseph's goat with four horns. My dogs hear your dogs, and my dogs are barking loud. Yeah, I get that a lot. People will tell me they hear the dog barking, and then their dogs start barking. It's pretty funny. So anywho, that was one of the things I just walked away from watching all those reaction videos about the election, thinking these people aren't good at this anymore. Like they're one of the reasons they're losing the working class and what's left of the middle class is just because they're not entertaining. They used to be entertaining. You used to want to watch them, and they're not anymore. And you see it with like the Disney streaming stuff, and like the movies aren't entertaining. The songs aren't good. The pop stars aren't good anymore. Britney Spears. I'm probably talking to the wrong age group of men. But when Britney Spears came out, it was evil. I mean, that was pedophilia. That was she was a young girl. I don't even remember how old she was, but she was young and doing all this incredibly sexualized stuff. But it was good. It was well done. The songs were catchy. The videos were attractive. And it was so destructive because it was so seductive. And that used to be it. The left was seductive. The culture was seductive, and it's just not anymore. And I don't think it's just because I'm old and it's get off my lawn, you crap. It's like it's ugly. It's not visually appealing, entertaining, engaging stuff anymore. It's fat Frenchmen painted up like goats. I don't what. I mean, and that goes back to how are these people winning 45% of the election? I mean, this was terrible stuff. But it also gave me hope for the future because they weren't learning nothing. They didn't learn a single lesson. I was watching, and I had actually heard this audio because it had been on it was on one of the podcasts I listened to, but I watched the video of this interview. I think I actually watched this today, and it was four of the people from the Harris campaign trying to do like a post-mortem on what went wrong, and didn't learn a thing. Didn't learn a damn thing. All they did, and this came through in the audio, but it was just you miss so much when the visual cues and the facial expressions and body language and stuff. These people were just being completely defensive and like, oh, but just it couldn't be helped. They couldn't be helped. We only had 107 days. The electorate was uneducated. They didn't know who she was. We couldn't introduce her to them. And I'm like, but dumbass, she was the vice president for 4 years. If we didn't know who she was, that is a fatal flaw, right? If being the vice president for 4 years does not let the American people know who you are, then you're just a failed official. You're just really bad at this. Like, there should have been nothing left to tell us about her. But they kept saying over and over again, we only had 107 days. We couldn't introduce the American people to her. I'm sorry, she ran for president in 2000, and then she was the vice president. So she was, she ran the vice presidential campaign. Then she was the vice president for 4 years. How much more time do you need? I mean, what is it that? Holy shit! I mean, what was she doing for the last 6 years? And she was a senator before that. And before that, she was the attorney general of the biggest state in the union. How could this possibly be an unknown person? You couldn't be more known. Anyway, so I actually have great hope for the future because these people didn't learn a damn thing. Anyway, so that was the first thing that sort of I wanted to mention. The second thing I want to talk about, and I haven't heard much about this yet, but apparently there is a peace talk scheduled between Putin, Trump, and Zelensky, slated to happen in Alaska, of all places, sometime in the next week, it sounds like. And I am very, very interested in this. Good evening, William. Okay, so apparently Zelensky isn't invited as of yet. First off, the choice of Alaska as the venue here. Usually these things happen in Paris, happen in Belgium, Brussels. They happen in London a lot. They've happened in Washington a few times. Bretton Woods was in Washington. There was a big peace treaty in Washington after World War I, the Washington Naval Treaty. I mean, these things tend to happen in the big beautiful places of the world, and not that I should say shiny. The big shiny populated places of the world. They don't happen in Alaska, and of course, Alaska used to be Russian territory. Russia had enough of a claim on Alaska that they sold it to us. I mean, that's how we got Alaska. Russia sold it to us for like $19 million. It was one of the worst deals in the history of the world. Yeah, maybe they're close enough to home. They feel like they can duck back across the Bering Strait real quick. Man, I let this thing go out. I got to start it again. I'm sorry. But there's got to be a lot of symbolism going on here with this choice of Alaska, because it's such a sign of Russian failure. Like, Alaska is one of the wealthiest pieces of dirt in the world. It is just swarming with gold and oil and gas and, unbelievable amounts of natural beauty and natural resources and more trees than we would know what to do. It's like Canada, but wilder. And they sold it for like a song. I mean, literally a song. Of course, at the time, they didn't know gold was there. No one knew anything about oil. And they sold it to this, the guy who negotiated it, I believe his name was Edward Seward. I knew his last name was Seward. They called it Seward's Folly. Because even in America at the time, they're like, why are we buying this giant, they called it Seward's Icebox. Because like, there's nothing there. Why would we buy this? No one knew anything about it. They hadn't found gold. Oil hadn't really been figured out yet. This was right after the Civil War. Edward Seward had been the Secretary of War during the Civil War. Really interesting conspiracy theory that Seward was the one who had Lincoln assassinated, that it wasn't a Confederate plot. Most of you probably heard this, but the idea is that Seward really, he was an industrialist. Hey, Lance Corporal Veteran, good evening, sir. That Seward was a Yankee industrialist, and he really wanted a hard Reconstruction, so he could just rape the South of whatever wealth it had left. And of course, Lincoln was going for this soft, easy Reconstruction, and so Seward allegedly set up this huge conspiracy and framed John Wilkes Booth, and it's an interesting conspiracy theory. It's got far more evidence behind it than most of these theories do. Uh, but yeah, like most of them, it's probably not true, but very interesting. Seward's an interesting guy, but uh, but Seward's the one who negotiates this Russian deal where they buy Alaska from Russia. And man, Trump's so good at staging. He's so good at the optics, and he's so good at the narrative. I just can't help but wonder. I think first off, I think both he and Putin both want to stick a thumb in the eye of Europe. Neither one of them want Europe involved in this thing because they're both mad as hell at the Europeans. But Putin gets to go to. I'm assuming they're going to go to Anchorage or maybe a military. I mean, one of the military bases up there or something. But Putin gets to go uh, to one of the greatest what might have beens in history, because what might have been had Russia held on to Alaska, and and Russia has this gigantic, almost unassailable fortress in the Western Hemisphere, and it's just this giant counterweight to the America when America's still young. Uh, One of the things everyone always talks about is how America was isolated, protected from all the major world powers for the first 150 years, and no one could really get to us. Even England, with her navy, had a hard time getting armies over here, and this massive coastline, and we were insulated and isolated from all of the European powers. Didn't work that way for Australia, so I don't know if that's really true, but it's still, I mean, that's like the dominant narrative. And how would that have been different if Russia had been sitting on our back door in this gigantic, massively wealthy territory that we would have had to have guarded against? Very, very interesting what might have been. Uh, no, 10 Tigers. Yeah, the Crimean War had been. Yeah, another good. By the way, good call. Uh, because the Crimean War is one of the most underappreciated events in world history as far as its impact on the modern world. The Crimean War was a huge, huge, huge thing uh, that had massive reverberations around the whole world. Uh, but what did they really have to defend? I mean, we weren't trying to get up there. We didn't do anything with it until they found the gold. And I want to say that was the 1880s, 1890s. It was late. It was very late because Jack London actually, obviously, that's where White Fang and Call of the Wild uh, was all set. Now that's interesting. Yeah, 10 Tigers. That makes sense because they would have wanted it to go with Canada. Uh, uh, there you go. There's another great what if. What if Great Britain had got a hold of Alaska, and that was British territory, and it was Canadian now, and that would have been another very, very interesting what if scenario. But anywho, so I'm very, very, very interested in this Putin-Trump meeting. Putin's, I know in our community, Les is here. Hey, oh, Les blew up. His phone blew up. Oh gosh, he lost his blue wrench. Hey Les, when I get there you go, Les. You should have your blue wrench back, brother. Because I got a moderator right now. Rob is in the chat, but Rob can't be here that often. And I like having a moderator to catch the real crazies. Sharon should still have her blue wrench too, brother. But good to hear from you. Okay, Lance Corporal Veteran tells us Alaska's original value was the fur trade and the triangle of trade for China ceramic. China tea sets, fur was sold for silver, and silver was used to buy Chinese ceramics, silks, and spices. Huh, that's interesting. I don't think I knew that, although that makes sense. But it would have been really hard to compete with the Canadians in that fur trade. Because when we talk about Alaska, still empty. It's just empty. There is nothing there. But anyway, so I'm really interested to see what comes out of this peace conference, because Putin, and this is what I had stopped and was going to choose my words carefully, but let me just blunder in. I had prior to the Ukraine invasion, I was very, very, very optimistic about Putin and Russia's future. I had bought into the whole Christian Prince thing to the point where I was even like speculating about Russia as a place to run to if our country got really, really bad. And then the Ukraine war. Say what you want about Ukraine. What? The Ukraine war was such a blunder, and it was pursued so badly. I mean, it's just the most incompetent, negligent, dumbass way to run a war. There is no scenario in the world where Ukraine should have been able to stand up against Russia. I mean, it's not David and Goliath. I mean, there's just no sense to it. And for Putin to have, the last I heard is that there may have been 1 million. Russia itself may have had as many as 1 million casualties in this war so far, and we know. Thank you, Les. And we know that, like he's been having to hire mercenaries out of North Korea. North frickin' Korea. I'm sorry. That is scraping the bottom of the barrel. I saw some interesting satellite analysis of Russian. What's the right way to say it? I don't want to say graveyards, but like places where you put old military equipment and just store it in case you ever need it again. Depots, old Russian military depots. They've been emptied. I mean, they've absolutely been emptied to the point where they're using the old T-64. Well, okay, Ozarks. We'll talk about that in just a second. But like to the point where they're refurbishing old T-64 tanks, and I was an anti-tank missile crewman in the Marine Corps, so I know a little bit about tanks. I've forgotten a lot over the years. I wasn't a tanker. I was anti-tank, so it was my job to be able to identify tanks, kind of know their capabilities, and be able to kill them. And obviously, just the inertia of the Cold War, even still back in '95, old Soviet gear was still our main focus. So So I know a little bit about the T64. It's called the T64 because it was adopted in 1964, which long time ago. But even in 1964, the T64 was like just barely an update of an older tank, which I don't remember which tank it was. I don't think it was the T55, but it could have been the T55. It was called the T54/55. And if that's right, if the T64 was just an update of the T55, hey buddy bear, I'm gonna call you, sir. I promise. I'll give you that story about the cow. I'll tell you what. I'll give you the story about the cow right now. But Buddy Bear lives in the area, and Buddy Bear knows cows. And some of you know I had gotten a cow sort of accidentally, which is one of the worst ways you can get a cow. And Buddy Bear has been after me for several years, as long as I've owned the cow, to get rid of the cow. He's like, you don't know what you're doing. You don't have the setup. I don't have any fencing. And it was a small cow, but it's still a cow, you know. And so what I was doing with this cow was I had gotten a good rope. It was like 100 and 200 foot long rope. And I was stringing it up across the property and putting the cow on the rope on a runner. So, you know, we had this runner and then a stringer, and the cow helped me keep my grass down. But I wasn't doing anything with the cow. I wasn't breeding her. I wasn't milking her. She was just an expensive pet. And Buddy Bear's been after me for years to get rid of this damn cow. And like I agreed with him, he was right. I need to get rid of the cow. But you know what? It was just like a project that was down the list. So I tried to sell her for a while, put her up for sale. No one was really interested in her. I was gonna kill her and eat her, but I just couldn't bring myself to kill and eat a heifer like that. But I couldn't figure out a way to get her bred. A small breed of Dexter, and I wanted to breed her to another, you know, small bull that was going to throw a small calf, and I just didn't have the setup to have the cow. And I finally just resolved myself that, okay, I've got this really big, stupid dog that's not good for anything and doesn't bark. And I was just going to keep feeding her and keep her in the yard, and what the hell, you know, maybe one day she turns useful somehow. Well, two of the boys were sleeping outside one night, you know, just camping out in the backyard. And they heard, uh, Buddy Bear, you were completely right. Completely right. Yeah, I mean, no, and I've told you that you were right before. But the boys were camping out in the backyard, and they heard what they thought was a donkey. They're like, there was a donkey in the yard last night. And the boy is one of the boys whose job was to take care of the cow. When he woke up in the morning, went up to, you know, feed her and water and everything, and he he comes back down and he's like, she's dead. The cow's dead. I'm like, no, the cow's not dead. But I walk up there, and sure enough, I've got a dead, bloated cow hanging, you know, laying on her back on the ground. Looks like that somehow she got her leg hooked over that rope. You know, the rope was strung up about chest high on a man. Because I'd string it up that high so she could go up underneath it and everything. But somehow she got her leg up over that rope. And then in trying to get herself off of the rope, she actually got the rope twisted around her hoof. And I can only speculate that at some time during the night she laid down, and then she ended up rolling over because her hoof was suspended up in the air, and then she suffocated. She suffocated, basically drowned to death because she was stuck upside down all night long. So I lost the cow, and I had to go get my father-in-law's tractor, and we had to drag her down into the ravine, throw her in the ravine. And I spent about a week burning her carcass. Burned most of it pretty easy, but I had to come back 3 or 4 days later and do a second burn and burn the rest of it. I haven't gone down there to look to see what's left now, but there haven't been any scavengers in the yard. I don't smell anything, so it's for my purposes. But that is the end of the cow saga. And Buddy Bear, Scout's honor, I will not do another large animal until I have adequate fencing and until I have the infrastructure. I'm not even going to do the sheep. So, Buddy Bear, your admonition to make the chickens productive, that is the new project. There will be no more animal husbandry until we have, because the chickens are pretty much just pets too. We got 30 birds running around the yard, and every once in a while we'll find the eggs. But for the most part, they hide the eggs in the when my work, because I lost, even before I lost the job, the work was really, really slow. I was going, maybe working one day a week or something. So I was getting all the scrap metal out of the yard because I have a scrap metal addiction. When I find anything that's metal, I grab it and throw it in the yard. So I had a huge, huge pile of metal trash. It's been in a couple of videos over the years. And so I was taking the opportunity to go, take all my metal in and get a little bit of cash. And we overturned some of the metal and we found this huge stash of eggs. And then we overturned a little bit more of the metal. Men, this snake, this was the biggest black snake. This damn thing was almost a dinosaur. I expected to see Chris Pratt on a motorcycle when we found this snake. Black snakes, they get about 6 foot long at the outside. This thing was every bit as big around as my arm. And we didn't even get to see it stretched out because it was all curled up, but it started slithering away underneath. And so we saw it uncoil while it was slithering, but we didn't see the other end. It felt like it took 5 minutes for this snake to uncoil and wind its way. I have never seen a black snake this big. I have rarely seen pythons this big, because this damn snake was just eating eggs. I doubt he even left that area. He was right next to where there were like 30 eggs. The chickens have been laying there forever. He probably was eating 3 or 4 eggs a day. Just whenever he wanted to, he'd reach out and grab another egg. Probably eating the egg as it came out of the chicken's ass, for all I know. This was the biggest snake, easily the biggest snake I've ever run into in the wild. And if we could have caught it, I shouldn't say I guarantee you, but facetiously speaking, this would have been the world record, Guinness Book of World Record black snake. Never going to be a bigger one than that one. Massive. Might have been able to eat a small child-sized snake. And I have small children. But I let him go because, if you got black snakes, you don't have the other snakes. I'm going to try once more on this, but this might be about it. So the chickens are kind of useless too. So we're going to make the chickens useful. I was going to tell Buddy Bear that story. I was going to call him and tell him, but as usual, I'm behind the 8 ball and everything, including calling people. Which reminds me, I was supposed to call the Sasquatch tonight too. But that's the end of the sad story of the cow. But I'm going to be very interested to see what comes out of this Putin conference in Alaska, because the big thing that happened this week with Russia is that Trump got all uppity with India, because India was acting as a pass-through for Russian oil. India was buying Russia's oil and reselling it on the market. And Trump got all uppity with India about it, and India's going to have to cut back because you can't be an export economy like India wants to be and not be on decent terms with America. If you're going to export things, you got to export them to us. We're the world's buyers. We buy everything, we consume everything. And if you're going to do export, you have to have dollars. You have to have access to the dollar system if you're going to be an export economy. Uh, yeah, so anyway, if they are depleted to the point where I started a whole host of ideas and didn't finish any of them. If Russia has been depleted to the point where they are now out of T-64 tanks to refurbish, the T-64 was obsolete when it debuted in 1964. That's what I was trying when I was talking about. It was always an obsolete tank. And I think there was a T-67, and then there was the T-72, and then they've had some more modern tanks, but they can't make many of them because they're just too sophisticated, allegedly. There was a T-80, there was a T-90, which was just a T-80 with fake armor on it. Now I think now they've got like a T-100 or a T-105, but I have heard that it's actually a modern battle tank. Russia's really good at propaganda around their weapons. But if Russia's out of T-64 tanks to refurbish, then they're essentially out of tanks. And if India is now going to have to dial back on selling so much of their oil for them, things are about to get hard for Russia. It's going to be really, really hard to continue an offensive. And I saw some really interesting analysis about the last 2 years of the war. And like for the last 2 years of the war, Russia's won like 12 square kilometers of land, and they've gained almost nothing over 2 years. It's essentially been like static. It's just been static. Now, apparently they have gained some. The land they've gained is important land, and they're pushing towards some strategic places, but they may just be out of steam. Like they just might not be able to get there. And Iran has been taken off the board as an ally, and China's having some troubles. Now China has been having troubles for a long time, but China's troubles are starting to accelerate a little bit. And Japan is upping their Japan is upping their military. They're Japan's getting serious about maybe being a counterweight to China. So China now has to start thinking about Japan. So China can't kind of prop Russia up the way China's been propping Russia up. But China was never able to prop up Russia very well because China gets all of its most advanced weapons from Russia. So this whole house of cards is just on the verge of collapse for sort of the Russia-China axis. And India is coming into its own, but India may have already peaked. India's already kind of at its peak population. They don't have a demographic crisis yet, but they're scheduled to have a demographic crisis in the next 20 to 30 years. I mean, this is India's moment right now. India has come into its moment. And so whatever India is going to get, hey, Luke B, it's right now for India. And China's moment's past. Anyway, so it's just going to be very interesting to see what happens in Alaska. What Putin are we going to see in Alaska? Because look, Putin. Here's the biggest tell for Putin. You know, Putin wants to be the Christian prince. He wants to claim like he's the defender and protector of the Orthodox world, the Christian Orthodox world. And that they are regional. Well, they want to claim they're a world superpower and demonstrate it through their regional dominance. But Armenia has had a long-standing war going on, or low-grade fight going on with Azerbaijan. These are two small little countries. And Russia had a defense treaty with Armenia that it just completely failed to keep up. Like Azerbaijan, with Turkish support and possibly Israeli support, which chafes me, invaded Armenia about 2 years ago, took a bunch of territory. Azerbaijan's a Muslim country. They do what they always do. They were animalistic in their tactics. And Russia couldn't do anything about it, couldn't stop it. Exposing Russia as regionally impotent, because Azerbaijan was a Turkish ally. Azerbaijan should have been a Russian client state. Armenia was, hey, Aiden, how you doing, sir? Was a Russian client state, and Russia couldn't do anything about the situation. Now Trump has gone in there and done a peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So Putin has a terrible crisis of credibility. Trump is on his doorstep far more than than NATO was on his doorstep prior to the Ukrainian war. This whole thing has just blown up in Putin's face. He has been exposed as a paper tiger, and he has expended vast sums of resources. Even if you go with the most conservative estimates on what Putin has lost, what Russia has lost, it's 250,000 troops. It's massive amounts of weaponry and material, and just huge amounts of treasure for almost no gain. I mean, almost no gain. You know, they already controlled eastern Ukraine prior to all this. They don't really control anything more than they did. Ukraine invaded Russia. Oh, Steve. Hypersonic missiles, sir, are a lie. Absolute scam. They have deployed those hypersonic missiles once, and they blew up an apartment building and they killed 10 people, 10 civilians. That's what hypersonic missiles did for them. I am sorry. The hypersonic missiles are a lie. And now Russia claims they have China claims they have hypersonic missiles. And I think North Korea claims they have, they're all claiming they have hypersonic missiles. And so far, the hypersonic missiles have done nothing. Nothing. Mariah, can you hear me? Yes, sir. Can you bring me a glass of tea, babe? Yes, sir. And maybe mix it with a little bit of that lemonade? Can you mix it with a little bit of that lemonade? Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about BRICS for a second. Now, by the way, and let me preface this with this. I believe, again, Marco, what did they accomplish? Iran did not hit, these details may be a little fuzzy, but the last thing I heard about the Iranian attacks on Israel was that they killed about 15 civilians, and most of those were Arabs. That they did no damage to any military infrastructure in Israel. Okay, you're not going to convince me that Iran wasn't trying to do significant damage to Israel. They launched hundreds of missiles. I think maybe even thousands. Someone can double check. And what did they accomplish? As far as I know, they killed a dozen or so civilians. So, no, I'm sorry. Iran's hypersonic missiles didn't do anything. They were strategically useless. And unless you're going to tell me, thank you, babe. unless you're going to tell me that Iran purposely aimed their missiles at civilians and non-Jewish civilians, and that was the effect they were going for, then you won't be able to convince me that Iran's hypersonic missiles did anything. And you're just not going to convince me that Iran could develop and build hypersonic missiles. Remember, the centerpiece of their Air Force were two F-14 Tomcats that we had given them back prior to the fall of the Shah. I'm sorry, these are not technologically advanced people. They don't have the weapon systems or the capability to make the weapon systems. And we had actually given them 6 F-14 Tomcats, and they could only keep 2 of them in the air because they didn't have the ability to manufacture spare parts. And of course, now these are also, at this point, these are 60-year-old airframes or 55-year, these are old airframes. Okay, but we blew up the 2 remaining F-14s that they had that were still airworthy just to get them out of the way. Okay, Iran did not shoot down a single aircraft. It was like 2 weeks that they were getting blown up, and they didn't shoot down a single aircraft, and they did not, as far as I can remember, and again, someone check me on this, I'm pulling this from memory, I don't believe Israel even lost anyone to like accidents. Like just regular military operations usually will have some sort of accidents. You'll lose people in training. I never saw combat when I was in, but I saw fatalities because I saw people die in training, or was around people who died in training. Just like one of them was a Humvee accident. One time, a guy was on the range next to me, somehow walked in front of a saw when it cooked off and got cut in half. I mean, training leads to casualties. And as far as I know, Israel didn't even have an accidental loss in that war. Iran does not have hypersonic missiles, not in any sort of way that's meaningful. Buddy Bear just mentioned that all missiles are hypersonic when they fall out of the sky. And so if that's how they're defining hypersonic missiles, then yes, they have hypersonic missiles. But all that means is they have missiles at that point. That's meaningless. That's propaganda. Okay, so until one of these countries shows me that these hypersonic missiles can actually do damage against military targets. Now, I'm not saying we should ignore them. I'm not saying that, you'd ever want to get arrogant, and act like, it's impossible for you to lose. But so far, we have no indication that hypersonic missiles are good for anything. But again, Steve. Yeah, Steve. I want to make sure it was Steve, not Steven. They didn't blow anything up. All right. They didn't blow anything up. They didn't do any damage. They didn't do any damage to us when they launched a couple missiles at Qatar. They didn't even do any damage in Iraq, and Iraq is right next door. We still have bases in Iraq. They didn't do anything. Okay, I refuse to believe that they were acting with restraint. That is not who the Iranian regime is, as far as I know. Bombs were dropping, missiles were flying. Please don't tell me they targeted apartment buildings on purpose. That was the best they could do. If that wasn't the best they could do, then why did they even go to war? Why did they push this thing to the brink like this when they had no intention of following through? And apparently, you just have to assume they had no capability to follow through. Their air defenses were ancient old Soviet stuff that didn't work for the Soviets. And that was 50 years ago now. We're talking about weapon systems, hey, Mark, that are 50 years old and were not effective then. I'm sorry, these people are not for real. Iran is not for real. Russia's not for real. China's not for real. These people are not a military threat outside of their own borders at this point. China can't get to Taiwan. Why can't China get to Taiwan? But the S-300s are useless. Okay, I mean, Marco, you just said it. Their air defenses were neutralized. What is the point of air defenses? If they can be neutralized without doing any damage to the neutralizing force, this is an impotent weapon. This is just straight up negligent failure. There's only two options here. Either they are so stupidly negligent that they were incapable of deploying the weapons, or they don't have effective weapons. There's no other options here. When there's 90 million Iranians, 90 million Iranians, we can talk about the Russian nukes, Mark. Give me a second. 90 million Iranians. I think there's what, 12 million or 6 million. How many Israelis are there? I think there's only like 12 million Jews worldwide or 15 million Jews worldwide. I'm pulling a number off the top of my head. 90 million Iranians couldn't shoot down one Israeli jet? No, I'm sorry. That is negligence of such an epic level that these people are not a threat. I'm sorry. If you're that stupid, if you're that incompetent, you are not a threat. Iran is not a threat. Remember, Iran and Iraq had an 8-year-long war, and neither one of them could beat the other. And then America goes to Iraq and runs through it in a long weekend. Not even hyperbole. That's not even a joke. The first Gulf War, when we attacked, when we invaded, it was a long weekend. And Iran has not upgraded their military since then. They've downgraded their military since then. Okay? I'm sorry. But, okay, so there's just shy of 10 million people in Israel. So they have literally 1/10 the population of Iran. Iran has 10 times as many people as Israel. Iran has oil. Iran has a history going back millennia. Why? Why were they not able to shoot down one airplane? They didn't shoot down one airplane. Were they infiltrated that completely? That's just more negligence and incompetence. It's not even negligence. It's just incompetence of such an epic level that it's unconscionable. Like, that's a war crime against your own people, that you are so incompetent that a country a tenth your size so infiltrated your military that they were able to neutralize all of your defenses and blow up your country at will. I'm sorry, if this was like a UFC fight, if this was a boxing match, I don't think I've ever seen a fight that would be that one-sided. That is the most one-sided engagement I have ever heard of in all of history. Of anything I've ever heard, I've never heard of a fight so one-sided. Someone a tenth your size just has complete control of your skies because they have complete control of your military. I'm sorry, Marco, that's just a lot of cope, brother. You're trying to cope. A lot of people fell for some hype. Yes, you can view Israeli operatives on Iranian soil using drones and ATGMs against the AD before Israeli planes entered. Okay, so what? So what? Hey, Swamp Yankee. All right, I don't care how they defeated them. They defeated them. It was an ineffective weapon system. It was an ineffective military. Counterintelligence and intelligence are vital parts of military operations. There's no way to frame this in a way that doesn't show Iran as being incompetent weaklings. Just utterly incompetent, utterly impotent. It would make it worse if they had effective weapons. If they actually had effective weapons and they were still that incompetent, screw them. They're not real. I'm sorry. They're not real. They shouldn't even be a country.
Iran shouldn't be a country. They're too stupid. Their leadership is too stupid to be a country. The Shah, the Revolutionary Guard, or not the Shah, I'm sorry. Well, the Shah was actually really stupid too. But the Imams, the Ayatollah, the Revolutionary Guard, these people are too incompetent, too negligent, too impotent to be in charge of a country. Utter insanity. Utter insanity. And there's no way around this. Iran was a key ally of Russia. Iran was using largely Russian equipment. This reflects very badly on Russia. And there's just nothing else that can be said about it. I'm sorry. And we saw something similar happen just with India and nowhere near on the same scale with India and Pakistan, where Pakistan is using largely Russian equipment. India was using largely European equipment. It wasn't even American equipment. And India is a much bigger country than Pakistan. So this is not the same thing. But Pakistan pretty much had free reign. India pretty much had free reign to blow up whatever they wanted to along the Pakistani border. And that little dust up that happened just a few months ago. Same thing. That fight was fought over Pakistani airspace. And there was some claims that a Chinese supplied jet had shot down, I believe, a French supplied jet, but ended up not being true. I can't even remember if the French jet had been lost at all now at this point. I feel like maybe the jet hadn't even been lost, that the whole thing was a scam. I have not heard the full story about Fort Stewart yet, 10 Tigers. But anyway, I know in our community, here's what I think happened. This is my analysis. Those of us who are conservative and believe in a traditional morality, and especially those of us who have been exposed to Christian teachings all of our lives, have had this view of America as being a deeply morally compromised and corrupt nation run by basically satanic forces. And we have been expecting for a very long time, me included, a divine judgment, which I still think is coming. But that led us to assume, some of us, and I never fell into this camp, that America was completely corrupt and the most corrupt. And we bought too much of the narrative that America had fallen and just hadn't stopped kicking yet. That we were just having paroxysms. And the fact of the matter is, hey, Sarge has gone on to that happy kennel in the sky. We lost Sarge. For those of you who don't know, we had a big Pyrenees, male Pyrenees. His name was Sergeant, and he was a big, beautiful dog, good dog. But he was just old, and he's gone on. And we jumped ahead of ourselves on that narrative. Yes, there's a lot of corruption in America, and yes, there's a lot of evil influence, and yes, there is a judgment coming for our sins. But that doesn't mean that everyone else is virtuous. It doesn't mean that everyone else is good and right. It would be maybe better for us if we did lose some of this dominance. I think it would be good for us if we lost this dominance. It would be, and we'll use this to segue into the BRICS, because someone asked me, do I think the BRICS are a joke? And the answer is yes, the BRICS are a joke. And I'll tell you why. I think America having the reserve currency, the dollar being the reserve currency in the world, is a terrible thing for America. It has a horrific moral implication. By the way, at some point my phone is just going to die. The stream is just going to go away. My phone's going to be dead. And that'll be it for the night. So when that happens, thank you, good evening. I appreciate the hell out of you. But we're just going to keep going until that happens. It is a terrible moral hazard for America to have the global reserve currency because people just give us money. They give us money to get the dollar, and then we're able to finance all this terrible stuff that we do, and we finance all these other terrible people around the world, and it has a very deleterious moral effect. So I want the global reserve currency to go away. Understand this. Everything I'm about to say, keep in the back of your mind that I don't think this is a good thing. I think this is a bad thing. I think one of the best things that could happen for the world is for there to not be a reserve currency. Absolutely, one of the best things that could happen to America is for the dollar to not be the global reserve currency. So what I'm about to say is not an endorsement of the facts on the ground, but here are the facts on the ground. The whole BRICS thing is a joke. All right, so BRICS, you all know this, but just in case someone hasn't, just to refresh our memories, BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then South Africa got added in there. And these countries have been trying to form an alternative economic bloc to America and the West, so that the idea being that America abuses the dollar and the global reserve currency for undue influence. I think that's kind of stupid. You want to use our dollar, it's our dollar. Obviously, we get to set the rules around using our dollar. But be that as it may, the BRICS allegedly want this alternative, competitive economic system, and they don't really know how to do it. Now, let's steelman BRICS. Let's give you the best case for BRICS. They represent huge amounts of the world's markets outside of America and Europe. Like, if you remove America and Europe from the world economy, BRICS represents the next biggest slice of the world economy. Brazil is actually, in my opinion, the most dynamic. In my opinion, Brazil is the real heart of the potential for BRICS. Brazil has a very young, large growing population. They have a lot of land mass. They have a lot of natural resources. Their foundation, their history, their backstory is Christian, and that seems to be very, very important for economic vibrancy. Even though no Catholic nation, Mark, are you still with us? No Catholic nation has ever achieved economic vibrancy by itself in a very long time. Germany being split between Catholics and Protestants. That's good. But like the story behind Brazil is real. And then there's Russia, which is a big, powerful country. Hey, Strap, I'm actually just drinking a mixture of sweet tea and a fermented lemonade that my wife makes. It's really good. It's like a really kind of cool Arnold Palmer. I've got some Maker's Mark, though, I could bust out. Maybe I'll bust out the Maker's Mark in a little bit. And, of course, Russia has been a major player on the world stage. India and China, it is very good. India and China represent vast swaths of the world population. We're talking about 1/4 of the world population in India and China, basically 2 billion people. So that by itself is real. I mean, Scripture tells us the wealth of nations is in its people. People, as far as nations go, represent wealth. Population is wealth. And then I don't know what the thing was with South Africa. South Africa is they have a lot of resources as far as raw materials, allegedly. I don't know. I don't think they have oil, but I think they got a bunch of other stuff. But South Africa's a wreck. Anywho. And so these guys are going to make this alternative world economic system to be a competitor for the dollar. And they're going to trade with each other outside of the dollar. They're not going to use the dollar for internal trade. That's their goal. They're not there yet, but that's what they want to do. Okay. So they do represent a lot of people, and they do represent a lot of manufacturing capacity. So that's the steel man. You got a huge markets, huge amounts of people to sell and buy things back and forth. And you do have a lot of manufacturing capacity in India and China mostly. But the problem is they don't trust each other. They don't have any way. I'm pretty high on Brazil if they can get rid of these damn socialists who are running the fucking place, which doesn't seem like they can at this point. But who knows? Bolsonaro was a pretty cool guy, and he's still relatively young. Where was it? They don't trust each other. How do they trade back and forth? See, what makes the dollar so valuable to the world is that no one controls it, or very few people control it, or no one can control it all that much. And so it's this neutral third party that everyone can trust more or less. They can certainly trust it more than they can trust each other's currency. Okay, so now they're talking about setting up a gold standard between the BRICS nations. Fantastic. I think gold should be the standard for, I think gold and silver should be the standard for every economy. The problem is, who holds the gold? Do you transfer gold every time you have an economic exchange? That's very, very inefficient and has a lot of risk involved in it. You know, the way this had worked in the past was that there would be central gold locations, and then they would just track who owns what portion of the gold. You know, everyone's sending in their little slips of paper saying, "Oh, I gave the X amount of gold to this person." Yada yada yada. The problem is you have to. That's called third party. It's third party something. One will tell me what it is. There's some type of risk it is. Third party risk, or I don't know. So you got to trust that all the gold is in this central location. Is China, maybe the Jews can help, brother. Is China going to trust Russia to hold all the gold? Is Brazil going to trust India? Who holds the gold? If you let everyone hold their own gold, do you trust that they actually have that much gold? And do you believe that if you ever decide to call in your gold, that they're going to send it to you? Contra-party risk? Maybe it's called contra-party risk. I can't. This is an irresolvable problem. And let me show you why. China and India have a border dispute that stretches back decades, and they can't resolve it between themselves. And so what they've decided is that neither one of them can have weapons on that border, but they can both have military forces just with no weapons. So periodically they get together and they have fist fights. And they fight with sticks and rocks on this border when they have their border skirmishes. This is, of course, one of the dumbest fucking things that exist in foreign policy world today. Now, India and China can't even decide to have a border war effectively. They can't even figure out, and this border, like this is some high plateau way up in, I believe it's the Himalayas. Like this is worthless land. It's good for nothing. There's nothing up there. They have to like walk 3 days to get up there so that they can beat each other with sticks and throw each other off cliffs. These people are going to be able to come up with a way to handle complex international trade without a neutral third party currency? No, it would take them decades to negotiate the first part of this, let alone implement it, let alone trust each other, then let alone not actually screw each other over. BRICS is not a thing. BRICS is not going to happen. I wish it would, because it would bring back the gold standard and it would get rid of the dollar as the global reserve currency. Two things I want to happen. Two things that I think would be wonderful moral goods for the world. But you're never going to get Russia, India, and China to agree on anything so complex as who gets to hold all the gold, and who gets to say whose currency is worth what. Because what's going to happen? Oh, we're not going to trade in the dollar. I'm going to give you rubles, and the ruble is worth $1,000. And China's going to be like, no, 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 no. The ruble is worth 50 cents, but the yen, the yuan, I'm sorry, the renminbi, whatever it is worth 5 million rubles. Ain't going to happen. It's just not. It's just not a thing. Okay, let's see what Michigan Prepper's saying here. Guy that fixed my dryer a year ago was an immigrant from Russia. His dad was stationed by the Chinese border in the Soviet Army in the 80s. He said it was taken seriously. They had primo weapons. Who had primo weapons, the Russians or the Chinese? Because here's the thing. The Chinese, especially back in the 80s, were using very low-grade Russian weapons. And Russian weapons in the 80s, I mean, the Berlin Wall fell for a reason. The Soviet Union did not disintegrate because it was so strong. All right, the Soviet Union disintegrated because it was weak and it lost the Cold War. That was 45 years ago. We have lots of history to look back on and see how weak they were. I've personally examined and been on Russian tanks from the 80s, and they were like killdozer. These were like up armored tractors. I'm sorry, they did not have primo weapons in the 80s. In the 80s, we had the M60 and we're transitioning over. The Chinese AKs are very desirable AKs, and we were transitioning over to the M1 Abrams. Russia's not even capable of making the M60. The tanks Russia had weren't competitive with the M60, let alone the M1 Abrams. And this was in the 80s, and very little's changed since then, except that the Abrams has gotten better, and we've decided our military is so advanced we don't even need tanks anymore, which I struggle with. But oh, you're right, M.I. Prepper. You told me that before. I'm sorry. I remember that. I remember that you're military intelligence. So I don't know at what period Russia has ever had primo weapons, and China has always had inferior weapons to Russia because China buys most of its tech from Russia. Like most of Chinese Air Force is based on Russian technology and Russian jet engines and stuff, and it's really fourth and fifth rate stuff we're talking about here. Remember, China can't even launch planes from their aircraft carriers that have weapons on them. They can't have the weapons loaded, or they're not able to launch from the deck with a full fuel load. I think that's what it is. They can't have weapons and a full fuel load. They can either have like half weapons and half fuel, or all fuel and no weapons. And then their planes can't land back on the carrier decks. China still cannot land jets on aircraft carriers. When Chinese jets take off from aircraft carriers, again, without full fuel loads or without weapons, they then have to land on land. These are just not people who are ready for prime time with their weaponry. When I was in the 90s, they didn't have night vision technology. Yeah, 10 Tigers, I really want to revamp my whole channel. And I would like to just transition over to Rumble. and kind of get off YouTube entirely. I don't know that that's. Uh, here's here's my dirty little secret. I love making videos. I love having this little channel. I love interacting with you men. I have actually made most of the videos I can make without like refreshing my knowledge base. Like I've made most of the videos I can make and be interesting to me. Uh, and so I need to stop and retool and up my knowledge base, up my skill level, to make interesting videos again. Uh, and that's really been why I haven't been uploading much to YouTube or anything to Rumble in several years. Uh, be- because the videos that were easy for me to make, I've made, and now I've got to get serious and put in the time and the effort, which maybe I'll have a chance to do now that I'm unemployed. But yes, I definitely want to fire up the Rumble channel. Rumble's not as intuitive to use. It's not as the problem, Mark, is I don't have that many guns, and I don't have access to a good range. But I do have some gun videos I want to get done, and I will get done here shortly. Uh, but I guess if I was gonna, hey, strapped, I'm actually a pest control technician. We do wildlife exclusions and stuff, and the company just ran out of work. It's just the boss called me. We talked about this earlier in the stream, so I won't belabor it right now. But the boss called me earlier in the week, and he said, "Look, I'm sorry, I just don't have any work, and I don't know when I'm going to have work again, and I'm not going to keep you on the hook." So he asked, I took his truck back and gave him his equipment, and uh, there you go. It is a little stressful, but I have some savings and I've got some options, and it's not terrible. When I say I'm unemployed, it's not like we're going to starve. Uh, I might have to sell some silver, but that's why I have silver as a savings account in case I need it. Uh, and silver prices are up right now, so. But this has not that I had any doubts about my silver strategy, but this has reinforced in my mind, silver stacking. Silver is the best medium term savings account there is in my mind. I do like revolvers. I only have one, but I could do some revolver stuff. Uh, my passion is men and men stuff. So I would love to do more man type stuff. Kind of. Uh, in my prepper, I do love the 357. I, I, so I can't remember who pointed this out to me, but revolvers are actually far more complex than semi-automatic pistols. The revolver's advantage is how easy it is to clear jams. If if something goes wrong on a revolver, you just pull the trigger and it rotates a new cylinder and it goes bang. But it's actually a far more complex piece of machinery uh, than a semi-automatic pistol, with far more moving parts that has to be, uh, it has to be timed right. It's actually clockwork. It's like clockwork. I mean, it's not like a watch, but it's not dissimilar. And there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of mass. So there's actually more complexity in the revolver. It's just when something goes wrong on a semi-automatic handgun, you got to drop the magazine, you got to rack the slide, you got to resolve the issue, whatever it is. Although racking the slide usually resolves it. Then you reload the magazine, then you rack the slide again. Uh, and with a revolver, all you do is pull the trigger, and the problem rotates out of the way. Uh, That's not an original thought to me. I can't remember where I heard that. It was someone smarter than me, which is not hard to do. Uh, and my prepper has the Taurus judged by the nightstand, and he's got a Smith and Wesson to walk the dog. Ooh, Mark's got the new Python. Sweet. I'd like to see that. I haven't been able to handle any of the new Pythons. I guess they're not new at this point. They're 4 or 5 years old maybe, but yeah, I was uh okay, yeah, Lance Corporal veteran. Yeah, and I guess that's my point. When something goes wrong on the revolver, it all goes wrong. No, I'm sorry. No, that's not true. If something goes wrong with the ammunition, because what's most likely to happen is a problem with the ammunition. And then the other thing is you don't have to worry about ejection with a revolver because lots of problems, not lots of problems, because there's not a lot of problems that happen with semi-autos. They're actually very reliable. But when problems happen and it's either the ammunition or some sort of ejection issue, failure to eject or the case gets stuck or something, all of those problems, all of the most likely problems, just rotate out of the way. But yeah, absolutely. If something goes wrong mechanically with a revolver, yeah, it's toast. Uh, but the most likely problems you are to face are going to be with ammunition and ejection or feeding. You don't have feeding and you don't have ejection and the cylinder. You can just rotate the whole chamber out of the way because where's the problem? It's in the chamber most likely. So of the problems you're likely to have, they're easier to resolve in the revolver. But yeah, no, if the revolver actually something mechanically, physically goes wrong with the revolver, you're done. But the same thing is true with the semi-auto. If something mechanically goes wrong with the semi-auto, you're done anyway. So that's kind of a wash. So functionally, I think yeah, revolvers are less likely to have a problem than semi-autos are to have a problem, simply because there's fewer steps in that cause the majority of the problems: feeding and ejection and ammunition. But like I said, not an original idea to me. But when that was pointed out to me, I went, oh, yeah, because I've taken my revolvers apart to clean it and everything, and there's just pieces everywhere. And you take apart that semi-auto, and there's nothing there. I mean, there are all the little tiny parts that you don't get into, but those are there for the revolver too. Uh, my preppers, you can shoot a revolver inside a purse. You're thinking like a Serbian now. Them Serbians, uh, I can't remember which gun it was, but the Serbians had a gun for a while that they had designed specifically to work when you pushed it up into someone's belly so that the slide wouldn't press back and go out of battery. I was like, damn, you are dedicated to making sure you can kill somebody if you're designing those features into your pistols. So go make sure it works when it's pushed into someone's belly. But no, I'm a big fan of revolvers. I think they're a really good choice for most people for everyday carry, self-defense. As long as they've got a good hard trigger pull. I'm not a big fan of light triggers for carry, especially when it's a revolver without a safety. Yeah, that trigger pull is your safety. It needs to be a 10-pound trigger pull, especially if this is someone who's carrying a revolver because they don't shoot a lot and they don't get all of the practice they need, and 10-pound trigger pull. Don't mess around. But Chiappa Rhino, very cool revolver. I've never held. Oh, I have held one. I've never shot one. I held one at a gun show, but I've never got to shoot one. But man, they look cool as can be, and I like the whole concept is you're shooting from the lower chamber instead of the upper chamber. So you got a lower bore access, so you get quicker follow-up shots. Uh, uh, it's a really interesting concept. But that my Jericho I love so much. My semi-auto pistol I carry. Uh, you know what I want to get? If I want to get that Beretta Cheetah in 380, I really like that pistol, and I don't really know why, except I like the Beretta because I qualified with it in the Corps. Uh, but I think that would be a really good little carry gun, especially for the wife. But my Jericho has kind of a it's also focused on having a low bore access, puts the slide rails on the inside bottom so that you lower the whole bore axis a little bit, and it gets supposed to be more controllable for follow-up shots. Uh, Giant steel frame pistol, which I don't mind carrying at all, but it just makes people so uncomfortable. And the people who it makes the most uncomfortable are other gun guys. They're like, why are you carrying that big old thing? Oh, if I ever need a pistol, look, I don't think your weapon is the place where you should save weight. I know Mark just said he carries a nice light little revolver. But I'm like, okay, do I need a pistol? Well, then I want a lot of pistol. you know. Uh, so I carry a full size service pistol. But the problem is you can't conceal, and there's just times when you need to conceal, just because for other people's comfort level, And I hate that. When I first started carrying, I had this idea that no, I specifically want to make people uncomfortable. I want them to see me carrying. Everyone should carry. You should assume everyone's carrying. The fact that but you know what? That's a one-man crusade that I've just, yes, I still think all that, but sometimes you just want to go to the kid's birthday party and maybe not, have to deal with all the awkwardness, and I go to church, you know, they're, the people there are fine with me carrying, but it's like, ah, this is church. Do we have to see it? That's what they asked me. They said, please don't, conceal. We don't mind you carrying, but conceal. I'm like, okay, fine. Uh, so I don't carry that giant thing as much as I used to. I have an EC9S little Ruger, uh, which is really concealable, and it's reliable and it does the job. Uh, it ain't sexy. Yeah. So yeah, I know that's the wrap on open carry strap. But how much is that really the case? Someone, first off, how likely is it that you would have to deploy your weapon anyway? And if you do, how likely is it to be a scenario where someone walks in and starts scanning the crowd to find the open carry? Uh, at least where I live, and I'm pretty rural in Georgia, in the mountains, and around here, open carry is a little bit. Open carry is not completely unheard of around here, and even the concealed carry you see is pretty barely concealed. Someone just said 380 is too ineffective, and I would respectfully disagree. For what it's designed to do, I think it's fine. This is self-defense in everyday setting. This is your getaway gun. Get away, get away, get away, get away. Uh, it's not for use in combat. This isn't SEAL Team 6 isn't going to be carrying 380. Although a lot of militaries used to use 380 as their standard pistol round. But if you shoot someone with a 380 from 7 yards, 99 times out of 100, you probably neutralize that threat. You know what, Strap? Paul Harrell's meat target tests were some of the best gun content I have ever seen. Paul Harrell, period, was some of the best gun content I've ever seen. I subscribed to Paul Harrell when he had 60,000 subscribers. And he was just the best. He was the best gun content on YouTube. Straight up. He never once said anything I didn't like, except that he just didn't like Ruger. And I'm a Ruger fanboy. And Paul's just like, I just don't like Ruger. I'm like, what? Shut up. Somebody asked if I like PCCs, and I think PCCs are fantastic. I think they are the best choice for home defense. They're better than shotguns. They are better than 5.56 AR-15s. I think PCCs are what should be on everyone's nightstand. They're more effective, far more effective than pistols. Far more flexible than shotguns. Yeah, no, Paul's brother is a good guy, but he's not Paul, and he knows he's not Paul, and he's not trying to be. I don't mind him. Unfortunately, I don't watch the content because, he's not Paul. But I hope that channel does well. PCCs, I think, are just a fantastic choice for suburban, especially urban. 9 mil out of a 12-inch barrel is a 100-yard option that's going to do the vast majority of what needs to be done. Easy to use, cheap to shoot. You'll be able to find ranges where you can shoot it. Remember, a lot of ranges, especially indoor ranges, you can't shoot rifle calibers. So you can find places to get a little bit of practice in. 10 millimeter. I really like the Rossi lever actions in like 357 and 44. I think those are fantastic little rifles. I say this all the time. You got it. 7 and 6 better. 7 and 6 better. I don't know what 7 and 6 is. Yeah, 45 long cold out of a 16-inch. You're going to do anything you need to do. And yeah, now here's the downside out of the 45 Colt, and it's a little bit longer. I love the high point. My dad's got one. I think I did a few things on the channel with it. I need to go borrow it from him again and use it some more. I think it's a fantastic little option. It's a little heavy, and I think they need to modify it to take Glock mags. I think High Point's stupid for not doing that. I shouldn't say stupid. When they designed it, I don't think Glock mags were as ubiquitous as they are now. But I think Glock mags are, for better or for worse, they're the standard, and I don't know why you would design a PCC. Yeah, okay. I don't know why you wouldn't have a double stack mag. I don't understand that part. I don't know why they insist on having that single stack. Even if it was going to stick with single feed, why wouldn't you have it a double stack single feed? You wouldn't even have to change anything really in the weapon. You just the pistol grip. You got to make sure it can take the wire. I just don't understand that choice, and I'm sure there's some reason. I don't know what it would be. Maybe there's some legal reason why they it keeps them from being like, I don't know, if they can say it's a single stack, low capacity magazine, maybe they don't have some sort of risk. I'm really interested in something I just saw on In Range TV, where it's a buffer tube. It's a delayed blowback buffer tube you can drop in on AR9s. And if I ever finish my AR9 build, I will probably put one of those in there. Because it takes your straight blowback and makes it a little bit more of a delayed blowback. So you get less reciprocating mass. You can have a lighter bolt, quicker follow-up shots. I like the concept. But yeah, I'm a big fan of all PCCs, and I think, as much as I'm a gun guy and I want all the guns, anytime someone asks me for a recommendation for a gun, I always tell them PCC. Go get, I usually say AR9 of some kind. I like that Henry Homesteader rifle. I think that's a really cool little idea. I tell everyone, the Rossies, the R92, I think they call it, grease gun. We were talking about the 45 Colt. To me, the only downside to the 45 Colt in the tubular magazine is just capacity. You can get 10 rounds in one of those. I think you can get 10 rounds at 357 in a 20-inch Rossi. And I think you can get like 8 rounds of 44 and maybe 12 rounds of 38. I can't remember. But when you start like 6 rounds of 45 Colt, is fine. I mean, like, what the hell you again, this will do 99% of everything you need it to do. In my opinion, would I rather have 6 rounds of 45 Colt or 10 rounds of 357? Just in case something went like really stupid. And I think I would probably prefer 10 rounds of 357 than 6 rounds of 45 Colt. But if capacity is really that important, then why am I using a tubular fed? I saw that Lance Corporal Veteran, and I haven't had a chance to look into them yet. But I thought it was a really interesting idea. I just saw like, a commercial type 3-minute video about them. I think the one I saw was actually in 5.56. But I thought that was a really interesting rifle. I still like the scout rifle concept. 45 Colt effective rounds been used for a long time. I'm not bad mouthing it at all. I do think, like, I possibly would even prefer 6 rounds of 357 to 6 rounds of 45 Colt. Probably. I'd have to think about that. If 45 Colt hits pretty hard, I might need to look at like some ballistics charts and really see what we're dealing with. The 357 is just so flexible and so versatile. It works on Indians, yeah. 454. Okay, what'd Strap say? He said he went with the M1A. Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about maybe the tanker rifle. I think a lot of times when people would talk about the M1A in connection with the scout rifle concept, they would be talking about a tanker rifle. And I just don't like short barrel rifles. The Scout M1A. It's probably similar to the tanker though. You cut down barrel, probably cut down to 18 inches. Yeah. That's what I think of as the tanker rifle. That might not be an accurate description, or it might just be a model. But yeah, we're talking about the same thing. I just don't like short barrel rifles. I'm like, what's that short barrel saving you? I've never understood the compromise. That 4 inches of barrel doesn't have any meaningful penalty to it. And even if it only ups velocity by a little bit, what do you gain by giving up that velocity? I don't see what the gain is. You know, the difference between 20-inch and a 16-inch barrel as far as handling goes, or weight, or anything. I don't understand the trade-off. I don't understand what you're getting for your lost velocity. I just don't believe that it handles all that much different. And I've spent a lot of time with a 20-inch barreled M16A2. Now, again, I'm old, you know, get off my lawn, you crazy kids. You and your damn short barrel rifles racing around. You're going to get somebody killed. But I just don't understand why. So, but I'm an old infantryman, you know, and I'm a big believer in the infantry. I've always thought that the drive to make, we should all think of ourselves as basic infantrymen, not as special forces operators. And I just think that should be the driving philosophy. We should be riflemen, not operators, because that's what's yeah, Lance Corporal Veteran. I don't think that that Homesteader is lever action. I believe it's semi-auto. I think it's just simple blowback. But I think it's also a really interesting gun. Yes, absolutely strapped. The velocity is far more important in 5.56 than it is in like 308. So you're right. There is less of a penalty for a short barrel with like a 308. You know, and the thing with the operator fat is just the level of training you need to commit to. Most of us can't even afford. We can't afford the time. We can't afford the ammo. You know, we can't afford the instruction. I always, people are like, my loadout. I don't have a pistol on my militia loadout, and I take a lot of crap about that sometimes. And they're like, what are you gonna do if your rifle jams and you gotta, you can't transition to your pistol? Well, first off, I probably gonna be better off just trying to clear the jam than I would be trying to transition to the pistol. That's not a simple maneuver, and it takes training and practice, and you need to be good with two weapons instead of just being good with one weapon. I'd probably be better off just practicing my reloads a little bit more on my rifle than trying to transition from the rifle to the pistol, especially if the pistol is in any kind of secure holster, because you got to have retention. You got to have retention, especially in that setting. So now you're undoing your retention. You're deploying your pistol. You're reacquiring your sight picture and all this. I'd probably better off just changing magazines, and I would probably be far more effective with 2 extra magazines. If I've got 2 pounds of weight to dedicate to weaponry, I'm probably better off with 2 extra magazines than I am with a pistol and a magazine and a spare mag. And that's because that's 60 rounds of 5.56 as opposed to 34 rounds of 9mm. So this whole operator idea that, oh yeah, we're running and gunning, and we're in the thick of shit, and the mag runs dry. It's quicker to go for the pistol and keep running and gunning. Maybe, if you're SEAL Team 6, if you're Warrior Poets, if you're John Lovell from the Warrior Poet Society, but if you're the Revolting Man, yeah, I'm probably going to be better just changing the magazine. I'm not going to have that level of training, and I'm going to be far more effective with that rifle than I will ever be with that pistol. And like I said, if I've got 2 extra pounds in my loadout to dedicate to weapons stuff, then I would rather have 60 extra rounds of 5.56 than 34 rounds of 9mm in a 4-inch pistol that I have to spend time acquiring competence on, when I should probably be more focused on improving with my rifle. So, I shouldn't say always, and I don't want to act like we shouldn't have ambition or aspire to competence and tactical excellence and all that. I don't want to just be the Luddite, the Jeff Cooper of the world. Why would you want anything more than a 1911? What do you think? I don't want to be that guy. Although the 1911 is a good pistol, but it's just, we need infantrymen. If we had 100,000 competent riflemen fulfilling their role in the militia as envisioned by our founding fathers, this would be a very different country. If we were all meeting on the green twice a month to check each other's marksmanship training and rifle handling, that's the foundation. That's what we need first. And then we can get the Minutemen. We forget about, we talk about the Minutemen. The Minutemen were the special forces of the militia. But they needed the regular militia to come up behind them, because the Minutemen, they left without any gear except their weapons. They just grabbed their rifle and their ammunition and they ran. That's how they could get going so quick. And then the rest of the militia followed up behind and had their gear so that they could actually stay in the field. Because that's the trick. The trick is staying in the field. That was George Washington's greatest accomplishment, was that he was able to keep an army in the field. He was running from battles for years on end. He would do everything in his power to avoid a battle, because he knew that the most important thing he could do was have a credible threat in the field. That's what we forget sometimes, is we need a credible threat that can be deployed. And that means riflemen, basic infantrymen. And you can build a lot of stuff on top of that, but that has to be the foundation. I think pistols are for defense. They're for when you can't have your rifle on you, and they're to get you to your rifle. And because of that, they're not super critical. Like I had I was in some mags, mutual assistance groups, and their question was, okay, what pistol are we all going to standardize on? I was like, well, who cares? And like, well, standardization's important. Well, standardization is vital for rifles. We're way out here in the middle of the woods in Utah. Absolutely vital for rifles. You need to be using, the same basic system and the same magazines and the same ammunition. You need to be able to interchange critical parts and stuff. But the pistols, it just doesn't matter. The pistols can be a really personal thing. Because they have such a limited use and such limited utility, they almost never get used, even like back in World War I and stuff. Pistols almost never got used in combat. that was why the M1 carbine got designed and developed to begin with, because they were given like, pistols to all the truck drivers and the support troops and everything, and they were finding out they were useless. They didn't get used, and when they did get used, they didn't have any effect, and so they came up with a light, handy little rifle that those guys could carry. It wasn't as convenient, but at least it ended up being a really effective little. I have a theory. Let me run this theory by you, men. I believe that the AR-15 was originally designed and adopted as a high tech replacement for the M1 carbine. I don't think there was ever any idea when they downsized the AR-10 to the AR-15 that they were making a service rifle. I think the Air Force wanted a space age replacement for their M1 carbines because it got into the Air Force first. Uh, and uh, and the Air Force used a lot of M1 carbines for airfield security and all that stuff. The Air Force just didn't need. They certainly didn't need the damn M14, uh, and so they just wanted something that looked space agey to replace their M1 carbines with. And then they got into service, and everyone realized, holy shit, this is an effective weapon. And there was never an intention for it originally. Hold on a second, Les. We'll talk about that. Give me a second. For it to be a battle rifle, it's just suddenly they needed something light and handy in close range in Vietnam, and they had this thing in the inventory because the Air Force was using it. And then they get it in Vietnam, and they start realizing, despite its teething problems, which it definitely had teething problems, but so did the M14. They're like, holy shit, this is a really handy little rifle. And it was, I'm convinced it was total accident. So I believe the genesis of the AR-15 is actually the M1 carbine, and that the M1 carbine is one of the most significant military weapons of the 20th century. But that's just me. I don't have anything to back that up with. That's total speculation. Okay, Les just said something interesting. Les said, I still love my 1851 Navy Colt black powder. He got it from Sportsman's Warehouse. So let's compare. If someone told you, and someone did actually just tell us this a little bit earlier, Mark told us, he carries a 5-shot 38 revolver, and none of us would at all think he was unarmed, underarmed with that 5-shot 38 revolver. But if you actually got on a range with a 5-shot revolver and compared it to a black powder revolver, which is going to be 6-shot, that Navy revolver, did you say Navy, Les? Yeah, he said Navy Colt. So the Navy is a 36 caliber. 36, 38, not that different from each other. Now the 36, the XM7. God damn it, 10 Tigers. you got to get me started on that XM7. Fine, you brought it up. Call for the thunder, you reap the whirlwind. Give me a second. We'll get into the XM7. Now, this black powder, it's much lower pressure, nowhere near the velocity, but it is still 6 shots of. Now, it's also single action, but that's not the. Yes, it's a handicap, but it's not like a fatal flaw. If Les told me he was carrying that black powder pistol as his everyday carry, that wouldn't bother me, because what's the standard? Well, most defensive shootings are 3 shots in 3 seconds, at like 3 yards or something like that. You know what? That black powder rifle can do that. That black powder pistol can do that. I bet you can easily get 3 accurate shots off in 3 seconds at a reasonable range without a whole lot of training. Now, yes, obviously black powder is not as good as smokeless powder. Obviously, that percussion caps are not as good as metallic cartridges. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that for what most people need a defensive pistol for, in America at least, you could do it with a black powder revolver and 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 be competitive. Okay, let's take a look at, before I get off on the XM7, let's look at some other people may have said something interesting. Uh, M16 is easier to shoot, much better training needed for the M14. Absolutely. Then 10 Tigers tried to give me a stroke. And then MI Prepper says, compare the Marine marksmanship training to the Army, especially back in the 60s. Big difference, especially Army REMFs. Marines did much more sophisticated marksmanship training. Yeah, so when I was in Haiti, we actually had an Army captain who was at the same base, and he got into a raging argument with my company commander, who was a major, because he actually called my company commander a liar to his face. Said, "You're lying. It's not possible to shoot the the M16A2 at 500 yards." He said, "There's no way. You don't shoot the M16 at 500 yards." Which, I mean, everyone knows the Marine Corps shoots the M16 at 500 yards. I don't know how this asshole didn't know this. This was not an infantry guy. This was some pogue. He had problems. He ended up actually getting sent home because he had a negligent discharge in the clearing barrel, which we probably would have covered up for him, except he called my company commander a liar to his face. But yeah, the Marine Corps takes marksmanship very, very seriously. Even in the age of the ACOG and stuff, it's still a very important part of our ethos. And there's some interesting reasons why. It goes back to the old days when we didn't have any or very little heavy weapon support. And so when we would do fire and maneuver, it was almost always dependent on, highly accurate aimed rifle fire rather than, any fire support from heavy weapons. I honestly, I like it, and I think it's very, very important for our identity, and it does set us apart a little bit. So for that reason, I think it has very, very good purposes still. I don't know if it's tactically as important as it used to be, to the degree they do it. But yeah, we would, if you couldn't, you would fail your rifle qualification if you couldn't pass the 500-yard firing line. And I don't remember, I think it was maybe 15 shots at 500 yards for the qualification. And back then it was iron sights when I did it. I can't remember. So we shot at, I believe it was 200, 300, and 500, if I remember correctly. Again, this was 30 years ago, so forgive me. But it may have been like 100, 300, 500, or whatever it was. Or it could have been 100, 200, 300, 500, but I think it was 200, 300, 500. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of advantages to good marksmanship. A lot of advantages to it. But anywho, oh, XM7. I may have lost my that XM7 is some bullshit. Utter bullshit. The XM7 is what happens when you let non-infantrymen loose on the range. I don't know what dumbass decided that what the infantry needed was a 13-pound rifle, but that piece of shit has never had to carry a rifle for 26 miles at a time. Fuck you. I got nothing else to say to whatever asshat thought that was a good idea, except fuck you. Oh, and on top of that, we're going to reduce the amount of ammo you can carry. You're going to carry far more weight. You're going to have far less ammo. Also, you can have a 13-inch rifle barrel. That that is the dumbest thing I have heard in a very, very long time. And on top of that, we're going to give it an incredibly complex experimental site with huge amounts of electronics. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong with that. And on top of that, we can't train with it with the ammunition you'll be using in combat because it's too hard on the rifle. So now you'll be going into combat with a completely different shooting rifle than you're used to. The trajectory will be different, the feel will be different, and yeah, we're going to burn out the barrel in about, I can't remember what it was. It was stupidly short amount of time that you burn out the barrel with the high-end ammunition. So now training is affected. You have a less effective warfighter who has less effective training. In my opinion, I don't think even the Pentagon is stupid enough to go through with this for widespread adoption. I think in 10 years, when we look back on the XM7, we're going to put it in the same category as the M14. Just a stupid, stupid, stupid idea. Now, I am an AR-15 fanboy. I'm an AR fanboy. I'm a Eugene Stoner fanboy. Utter fanboy. If I was going to get a tattoo, I don't have any tattoos, but if I was going to get a tattoo, it is not completely unlikely that I wouldn't get a likeness of Eugene Stoner tattooed on my ass. I am a fanboy. But I recognize that that platform has been in use for 60 years. Maybe it's time for an update. I'm okay with that. But that update should be, in the ammunition. We need a more effective round. Maybe you put it in the AR-10, maybe you keep it in the AR-15. I'm still pissed at the Corps for going to that frickin' piston system. I know they like it. They say it's really effective, but I'm a Stoner fanboy. I just like turret gas impingement. I think the gas piston is an inferior system to the gas impingement. All right, so if we need to fix the round, let's fix the round. If the round is the problem, if we need better terminal performance on target, that's the round. That's not the rifle. Fix the round. Now, they say they did both, but there was no problem with the rifle. There was a problem with the round. Now they've got this stupid round that they can't even train with because it's too powerful. Also that they can have, what? A 13-inch barrel. We have to have a short barrel. Oh, we have to have a suppressor. Why do we need a suppressor? It's still not hearing safe. It's still like stupidly loud. It doesn't actually accomplish any end goal. If you shoot that thing with that suppressor on, people are still going to know where the shot came from. Anyone within range of that rifle is going to be able to hear where the shot came from. That suppressor accomplishes nothing except to make the whole damn thing more complicated, heavier, and less effective. There is not one aspect of this solution that doesn't make the problem. Well, I'm sorry, it doesn't make the. If the problem is terminal performance on target, then it doesn't make that problem worse, but it brings up a whole host of other problems. A heavier, more complex platform with less ammunition. Any E3, any Lance Corporal or E3, whatever the hell they are in the Army, specialists, thank you. Any lance corporal or specialist could tell you this is stupid. Uh, this doesn't work. All they had to do was was up the uh, up the round. You know, so in case you want to, what do you want to do? You want to make it slightly heavier bullet, a little bit more powder. You know, you want to make it like a 224 Valkyrie type thing here. Uh, you know, make it. You know, maybe you want it to be a 270. Uh, but I just don't know why they're redoing this whole M14 fiasco. It's that thing all over again. It's got that written all over it, and they're going to spend hundreds of millions. It's going to end up being $1 billion because everything the Pentagon does. I agree, in my prepper. I think the AR-10 is the solution. And so, like again, hey, Night Howler, how you doing? I'm doing good, sir. Maybe you don't want the 308. Maybe you want to do something in 270 or 6mm or 6.8 or whatever, 6.5 or whatever it is. Anarchy Television's here. Okay, fine. Do that. Why all this other horse shit? Why do you got to have a 80,000 psi round so you can have a 13-inch barrel so you can have a suppressor that doesn't accomplish anything? It's insanity. This is what happens. You know, this is what happens when you politicize the officer corps. The Clintons started it in the 90s. They politicized the officer corps. Bush didn't fix it. Obama made it worse, and now we've got some gibbering idiots in charge of our military. Just some dumbass, useless pieces of trash. I remember I was in when the Clintons were in office, and I remember that people one of the debates that was being had in the military at the time was that there needed to be a career path for non-infantry officers and non-pilot. So in the Marine Corps and Army, they wanted a better career path for non-infantry officers, and in the Air Force and the Navy, they wanted a better career path for non-pilots and they wanted to let all the ancillary officers have career paths. Well, no, because the whole point is the warfighters. It's the tip of the spear is the point. Yes, hey, supply officer is a honorable service and a absolutely vital. I am not down in those guys. You absolutely have to have tech guys and mechanics, and I'm not denigrating those people's service, but your leadership has to be the people who understand the mission, who have performed the mission, who have been successful at the mission. And that means that in the infantry forces, infantry people need to be the ones with the clearest career path. Yes, there needs to be a way for exceptional supply officers to rise through the ranks. Eisenhower famously never saw combat. Eisenhower is one of the greatest military leaders of the modern time. So yes, there needs to be a way for exceptional officers to rise above their MOS. But the default needs to be that in the Air Force is run by pilots. In the Navy is run by sailors. And in the Army and the Marine Corps, it's run by infantry officers and senior NCOs, infantry, men who've seen combat. Men who've been blooded, men who no, I'm sorry, I don't care if we're diverse. It doesn't bother me if we are, but I don't care if we are. I don't care that all the MOSs, have satisfying career paths. I don't care that you want to serve your country. I don't care if it makes you feel good. I don't care what it does for your self-esteem. We've got one mission here, and that is to hurt people and break things in defense of the republic. And that gets people killed on both sides. You know, people are going to die, and you have to have people who who understand the mission and who have performed the mission and are steeped in the mission. And you don't need dumbasses who adopt a 13-pound rifle with a scope designed and made by Apple. The iScope. We have the iScope. And we're going to give it to a bunch of 18-year-olds and tell them to jump in and out of helicopters with it, and it'll be fine. It will not be fine. And you know what's really bad about this scope? This scope is evil because it has the capability for to transmit its visual, you know, back to whoever wants to see it. You know, so it's basically a camera. And now, you know, officers and senior leaders thousands of miles away can be watching through the scope and telling that warfighter on the ground what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. One of the great strengths of our military is our NCOs, and the operational flexibility we give our professional warfighters in the field to operate free of micromanaging. But when, you know, the president can be sitting in the war room back in Washington, D.C., and flipping back and forth between all the views of all the scopes and on all the field, the temptation to try to micromanage a battlefield is going to be overwhelming. And the next thing that will happen is that some dumbass lawyer somewhere is going to convince them that they have to save all that footage and it's going to be admissible in court. And the next thing you know, there's going to be some poor 19-year-old kid who had to make a snap decision in a life and death situation going to prison because someone questioned his decision making, you know, when they had hours at a time to review the video footage and no one was trying to kill them while they debated the ethics of the situation. It's going to be bullshit. Utter and complete bullshit. And then wait till some really smart 19-year-old figures out how to hack the whole damn system, and he shifts everyone's rifle 0.5 degrees to the left and no one's hitting anything because we've got this whiz-bang digital iScope that, you know, because the technology always does exactly what it's designed to do. There's never been a technological failure of any kind whatsoever. Let's hook everyone's scope up to the internet. What could go wrong? You want to fix the rifle? You give us lasers, but like real lasers that blow things up. We want laser guns. The British Navy literally has almost as many admirals as in World War II, when they had 15 times as many ships. Yet now they literally have more admirals than warships. That is awesome. The problem with tech is all the frontline support elements with high-tech weapons and tools think they alone are the be-all, end-all, and structurally the tech allows those of low merit to advance. Yes, it used to be a truism, and most of you have probably heard this saying, but one of the axioms you used to hear all the time is to never, ever
never ever adopt a hardware solution to a training problem. Uh, you know, if the hardware is replacing training, then you have an issue. Uh, but no, Mark, we want laser guns. We want laser guns. If we're going to have all this technology, then by God, I want to see streaks of light shooting down range and blowing up stormtroopers. If I got to have technology, you better give me the adventure. Hey, vulgar display of truth. How you doing, sir? All right. I might be running out of steam, man. This has been a good stream. Oh yeah, Night Howler. If someone figures out how to hack into these blue Judge, I want to Judge Dread pistol too. If someone figured out how to hack this network, if someone figured out how to get into this little Bluetooth enabled system, they know where all your people are. They know what your people are looking at. They know what you're targeting. They know what your objective is. Uh, uh, I need a cigar, vulgar display. I just smoked my last one. I mean, obviously, I'll go buy more. It's not my last one ever, but I'm out for the time being. Uh, yeah, no. Uh, Fiber is hard to hack. I talk about fiber optics. I think these scopes just have they have computer systems in them. They do uh, uh, ballistic calculations, and they move the reticle around, and they factor in for weather, which means somehow they're hooked up to the internet and they can get the weather report. Uh, oh, I see what you're saying, vulgar. Yeah, fiber optics. Yeah. Uh, all right, so we do have plasma guns. Yes. Uh, Also, these Gauss guns they're starting to develop are kind of interesting. Uh, I don't know how far away they are from being practical, but they're fun. Uh, yeah, yeah. Someone figures out a way to zap your scope. I don't. Does that XM7 have backup sights? I'm sure it does. Okay, I did. I hit a brick wall. So I appreciate the hell out of you, men. Yeah, Night Howler. I mean, we may be at the point where we're past the infantry. I hate to think that. Uh, but in the age of drones uh, and the targeting software and all this stuff, it may be that. But you know what? As soon as we say that, someone's going to figure out. Like we got the Jew space laser. Is a real thing where they can fry electromagnetic systems very, very effectively. It could be that we're past the age of the infantrymen. It could be that the infantryman is the only non-hackable weapon left on the battlefield. Uh, it's just really hard to predict what's going to happen. Uh, yeah, robot soldiers, but they have EMP lasers now. They can shoot EMP. They can aim a laser at a target and then shoot electricity down the laser and fry all the electrical systems that it hits. They can knock missiles and planes out of the air because they have aimable EMP guns now. So you know what? It may be that kind of tech, quantum computing and whatnot means that you can't have any electronic systems on the battlefield.
because they can be hacked or they can be fried or they can be jammed or whatever. So who knows? Maybe the age of the infantryman is, maybe we're going to go back to swords. You know, maybe the tech, the defensive technology is going to get so big that we'll have to start hacking each other with swords again. For all we know, uh, I'm not giving up my rifle yet. Uh, but the AI thing, the AI stuff, it's like 5G. 5G was going to fry all of our brains. It was going to be so powerful that we were all going to get brain cancer and mind control. And I got a 5G phone, and it sucked. The 5G wasn't even as good as the 4G I'd been using. I had to get a 5G for work. Uh, didn't get any better service. Didn't, as far as I could tell, the internet wasn't any faster. I upload and download a bunch of pictures for work, uh, not for recreation. And I couldn't tell the difference. The 5G AI is turning out to be the same way. AI generated content sucks. Internet searches now are useless. Like, I don't even go to Google or anything to like search for a local business. I just go to my Maps program in my Maps app and see what pulls up. Because if I tried to search for a plumber recently, and I just said plumbers near me or plumbers near my zip code, and it was pages and pages and pages of useless websites that were telling me, what a plumber is, how to find a plumber, what are the signs of a plumber, the processes you go through to look for. But all I wanted was a list of damn plumbers in the fucking area, and I couldn't get it. It was the most infuriating thing ever. AI, I don't know. Maybe it gets better, but right now AI is useless. There was this kind of funny thing that happened a few years ago, and maybe even 10 years ago now, where it was my beloved Corps. I love Marines, but they put this AI enabled robot thing in the middle of a field, and they told these Marines figure out how to defeat it, and like they beat it in that morning, and what they there was a bunch of just like lance corporals and stuff. It was a brilliant experiment. And what these kids did was they went and got a cardboard box and just like crawled up to it inside the cardboard box, and the AI didn't identify it as a threat because it was just a cardboard box. The AI didn't you know couldn't tell that a moving cardboard box is is possibly not as harmless as a normal non-mobile cardboard box, uh, and they were able to walk right up to it, and that was that was the challenge. You had to be able to get to the. I think the scenario was that like the AI was a sentry, and you had to be able to get to the sentry and disable it. Uh, and then the other problem they're having with this AI now is that it's corrupting itself because it's learning from AI. Uh, and it's not learning, but the information it's drawing from is now AI generated information. So now you got AI drawn from AI. It's like the old copy of a copy thing. Every bit of AI, not every bit, but every so often in AI generated information, there's going to be something just randomly crazy. Like it's just going to freak out and say something stupid. And then that information gets inserted into the information it draws from later. Uh, and so these random bits of crazy stupidity start kind of multiplying over time. And they actually say AI can like commit suicide. It can so corrupt its own database that the information it's drawing from is useless. You actually have to constantly be training AI with human generated content, or the AI will become unintelligible over time. Uh, and 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 far less accurate. So who knows what the AI is? And even I don't even like to say AI because it's not it is artificial, but it's not intelligence. It's the term that seems the most descriptive to me is large language models, LLM, and all it's really doing is is taking a word or a series of words and searching the entire internet to see what other series of words are most often connected to that series of words. And it's more complex than just that. I mean, it can generate content, but the content it generates there's a lot of AI generated videos on YouTube now, and they suck, and you can usually tell right away. And I just skip them. I don't even watch them because first off they insult me, but usually they're boring, and they're not, and they all sound like commercials. I am just not sold that AI is the wave of the future. Obviously, it's a powerful technology. I'm not, you know, yes, I am a Luddite. If it were up to me, we'd go back to smoke signals probably. Uh, but one of the foundational, one of the stories that when I first heard it really affected my thinking about this topic of technology was that when they were developing the first nuclear bomb, one of the objections to it was that when they detonated the first nuclear bomb, that it would actually start a chain reaction that would burn up all the oxygen out of the entire atmosphere. That you would basically get spontaneous combustion, and this flame would just shoot over the whole world and burn up all the oxygen in the entire world. And they couldn't disprove it. Like, they never actually were able to say for 100% sure that wouldn't happen. Like, when they detonated the first nuclear explosion, there was a non-0% chance that they were going to immolate the entire world in a giant ball of fire. And they did it anyway. Now, I honestly, it's a chance that this is apocryphal. Maybe it was made to be too big of a deal. You miss pagers. You know who doesn't miss pagers? And when I heard that for the first time, however true it really is, I was like, you know what? That kind of tells you everything you need to know about technology. Not only do we not really understand it, not only do we really not know what it's going to do, but the people who are doing it, the technologists, they don't even know, and they don't understand, and they're still going to frickin' do it anyway. Yes, they might blow up the entire world in a chain reaction, but, technologists got to technologize. And it almost never ends up doing what they say it's going to do. Just like the 5G. Hey, Palmetto. Yeah, I'm actually about to shut this one down, but everyone keeps being interesting. Now, I'm up late. You're up late. I actually got a decent start on this one, too. We started at 9:30. We had some good conversations. But anywho, so yeah, are the T-800s ever gonna come back in time to kill John Connor? No. The Skynet is a fantasy, but at the same time, there's a non-zero percent chance that, yeah, they could burn up the whole world in a nuclear chain reaction. I don't know. Anywho, I actually am going to call this one now, though, because it is a little late. I'm sorry to be bailing right when Palmetto gets here, but I have to be useful tomorrow. It is firewood season. Firewood season is fast upon us, and I have very little firewood. So tomorrow is firewood day, or the first firewood day. So, sharpen the chainsaw. I went out yesterday and swung the axe a little bit, trying to get, back in shape. Because at 50, I'll be 50 here in a few months. And man, it used to be I could set the axe down at the end of the year and pick it back up at the beginning of the next year and be fine. But now I got to work my way back into it. Phew. Anywho, but I actually chopped down a pretty good sized pine tree Friday just to start swinging the axe again. And so tomorrow I'll cut up that tree and I'll start splitting a little bit and just make sure I'm ready for when the cold weather comes. But anywho, all righty, man. We appreciate you. Good conversation. Yeah, get younger. Okay, I hadn't thought of that. Since you bring it up, uh, enjoyed the hell out of it as it gets worse. Thanks, Mark. As usual, you were far more interesting than me, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy this so much. We'll talk to you soon, man. Thank you.